Jake Morrison stood at the big window of the spaceship, looking out at the stars. He had been fighting in space for 3 years now, 3 long years of war against the Zephyrians. The alien ships looked like giant crystals floating in the darkness. They were beautiful and deadly at the same time. Jake remembered the first time he saw them attack. The crystal ships had come from nowhere and destroyed the colony on Mars Base 7. 10,000 people lived there. Men, women, children, all gone in one day. The Zephyrians turned everything into crystal statues, then broke them apart like glass. Now, Jake was the second in command on the UES Defiant. Captain Lisa Grant was a good leader, but she looked tired these days. Everyone looked tired. The war was not going well for humans. The aliens were too strong, too fast, too smart. The door to the bridge opened with a soft sound. "Jake, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and serious eyes. Amy ran the weapons on their ship. Jake followed her to the main screen. What he saw there made his heart stop. Hundreds of crystal ships were coming toward them, but they were not attacking. They were flying in formation, like they wanted to talk. "Captain Grant to the bridge," Amy called over the speaker. Lisa Grant arrived in less than a minute. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been fighting aliens longer than anyone else in the fleet. "What do we have, Amy?" "Zephyrian fleet, Captain. But they are not shooting at us. They are sending a message." The main screen changed. An alien face appeared. It was blue and silver, with 4 arms and big eyes that looked like diamonds. When it spoke, the voice was deep and cold. "Human ships. We are Crystalline Who Cuts Deep, war leader of the 3rd Battle Group. We come to speak of alliance." Jake could not believe what he heard. Alliance? With the aliens who killed his friends? Who destroyed whole cities? He felt angry and confused. "Captain." Grant stepped forward. "This is Captain Lisa Grant of the human fleet. Why would you want an alliance with us?" The alien's face changed color from blue to dark red. "Because something worse than war has come. Something that kills everything. The Devourers have arrived." The word sent cold fear through Jake's heart. He had heard stories about the Devourers. They were supposed to be just legends, scary stories that spacers told each other. But the fear in the alien's voice made it real. "The Devourers destroyed 2 of our home worlds in 4 days, the alien continued. "They eat everything. Ships, planets, stars, nothing can stop them. We have fought them with our strongest weapons. Nothing works. They just grow bigger." Amy looked at the sensor readings. "Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures coming from the outer system. Something big is headed this way." Lisa Grant was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her thinking. The humans and Zephyrians had been killing each other for 3 years. Could they really work together now? "What do you want from us?" the captain asked. "Your ship designs are different from ours. Your weapons work in ways we do not understand. Perhaps together we can find a way to fight them? If we do not work together, we will all die." Jake thought about New Haven, the colony world they were supposed to protect. 2 million people lived there. His sister Carol worked in the medical center. His nephew Danny was only 8 years old. If the Devourers were as bad as the alien said, those people would need protection. The alien ship moved closer. It was huge, maybe 10 times bigger than the Defiant. The surface looked alive, like it was breathing. Jake could see other aliens moving around inside through the crystal walls. "You want to come aboard our ship?" Captain Grant asked, double quotes, "Yes, we must plan together. Time is short." Jake did not like this. These aliens had killed so many humans. They showed no mercy in battle. They were like living weapons. But he also knew that Captain Grant was right to consider it. If the Devourers were real, they would need all the help they could get. "Permission granted," the captain said. "Transport to Bay 2? The alien's image faded from the screen. Jake felt his stomach twist with worry. In a few minutes he would be face to face with one of the monsters who had been trying to kill him for 3 years. Bay 2 was the biggest cargo area on the ship. Jake stood there with 20 other crew members, all holding weapons. They did not know what to expect. The Air in the bay started to shimmer and glow. Then the alien appeared. Crystalline Hukut's deep was even bigger than Jake had thought. 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and legs like tree trunks. The alien's skin was covered in natural armor that changed colors as Jake watched. Right now it was dark blue with red streaks. Jake guessed that meant the alien was ready to fight. "Human warriors," the alien said, looking around the bay. "We have killed many of your kind. You have killed many of ours? Today we must put that aside." Captain Grant stepped forward. She looked tiny next to the alien, but she did not seem afraid. "Show us what we are fighting." The alien touched something on his arm. The air above them filled with images. Jake saw ships that looked like they were made of darkness itself. They moved through space like living shadows, bending and twisting in ways that hurt to look at. The first Devourer ship we found was near our mining station on Kepler 442b. The station had 5,000 workers. We sent a battle group to investigate. 12 ships, our best warriors. The images showed the crystal ships attacking the shadow vessels. Their weapons were beautiful and terrible, turning space into a light show of death. But the shadow ships just absorbed the energy and grew bigger. All 12 ships were consumed. Not destroyed, consumed. The Devourers ate them and everyone inside them. Then they moved to the next world. Jake watched the images with growing horror. He saw planets being drained of all life, turning into empty rocks floating in space. He saw stars growing dim as something fed on their energy. "How many of them are there?" Amy asked. "We do not know. They come from beyond the edge of known space. Our scouts report at least 1,000 ships in the main fleet, maybe more." 1,000 ships? Jake's heart sank. The human fleet had maybe 50 ships total. The Zephyrians had more, but even together they would be badly outnumbered. "What makes you think we can fight them when you cannot?" Captain Grant asked. The alien's armor changed color again, this time to a lighter blue. "Your species fights differently than ours. We use energy weapons, powerful and precise. You use many different kinds of weapons. Some of your technology is primitive, but it works in ways we do not expect. Perhaps what seems primitive to us will be effective against them." Jake thought about the human weapons. Rail guns that fired chunks of metal at incredible speed. Missile systems that could change direction in flight. Nuclear weapons that released energy in huge bursts. None of it was as advanced as Zephyrian crystal technology, but it was different. "How long do we have?" the captain asked. The main Devourer fleet will reach this system in 18 hours. The colony world you call New Haven will be their first target. After that, they will move to consume everything else. 18 hours. Jake felt the weight of time pressing down on him. In 18 hours, everyone he cared about might be dead. His sister, his nephew, everyone on New Haven. "We will need to combine our fleets," Captain Grant said. "Share information. Coordinate our attacks." "Agreed. But understand this, human. If we fail, both our species will cease to exist. The Devourers do not take prisoners. They do not make deals. They only consume." As the alien prepared to return to his ship, Jake looked out at the crystal fleet floating in space nearby. A few hours ago, those ships had been his enemies. Now they were his only hope for survival. The war between humans and Zephyrians was over. The real war was about to begin. The combined fleet moved through space like a deadly parade. 12 huge Zephyrian ships sailed next to 5 smaller human vessels. Jake had never seen anything like it. Just yesterday, these two groups had been trying to kill each other. Now, they flew together toward the most dangerous enemy either side had ever faced. Jake stood in the command center of the Zephyrian flagship. The inside of the alien ship was strange and beautiful. Everything was made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. The walls seemed to breathe, and the floor felt warm under his feet. Other human officers were there too, trying to understand how to work with their former enemies. Admiral Susan Blake commanded the human ships from her flagship, the Vigilant. She was a tough woman with short gray hair and cold eyes. She had lost her son in the war against the Zephyrians. Now she had to work with them to save everyone else. Human fleet, this is Admiral Blake. All ships report ready for combat. We are 30 minutes from contact with the enemy. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Devourers were coming fast. Their ships showed up on the screen as dark spots that seemed to absorb light. There were more of them than anyone had hoped. At least 200 ships in the first wave. Crystalline, who cuts deep, stood next to Jake, his four arms working at different control panels. The alien's armor was bright silver now, which Jake had learned meant he was focused and ready to fight. Your Admiral Blake has an interesting mind, the alien said. She thinks like a warrior, but also like a protector. This is good, Jake nodded. She lost her son in our war. But she knows that saving lives is more important than revenge. Perhaps that is why your species survives when others do not. The first human ship to spot the Devourers was the destroyer Lightning, commanded by Captain Bill Murphy. He was a young officer, only 30 years old, but he had fought in more battles than most veterans. Contact. Enemy ships bearing 270 Mark 15. Distance 400,000 kilometers and closing fast. Jake felt his heart start to beat faster. Through the crystal walls of the alien ship, he could see the darkness approaching. The Devourer ships moved in ways that made no sense. They flowed through space like living shadows, bending and twisting without following the normal rules of physics. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Blake commanded. Zephyrian vessels, you are authorized to engage at will. The first Zephyrian, Dreadnought, the shard of eternal light, opened fire with its crystal weapons. Beams of pure energy lanced out toward the enemy. The weapons were incredibly powerful. Jake had seen them destroy entire city blocks on human worlds, but when the energy beams hit the Devourer ships, something terrible happened. The shadow vessels absorbed the energy and grew bigger. The crystal weapons that had been so deadly against humans were useless against this enemy. What the hell? Captain Murphy's voice crackled over the radio. The energy weapons are feeding them. Jake watched in horror as a Devourer ship that had been hit by 3 different energy beams swelled to twice its original size. Then it moved. Faster, heading straight for the Zephyrian dreadnought that had attacked it. All Zephyrian ships, cease fire immediately. Admiral Blake ordered. Your weapons are making them stronger. But it was too late for the shard of eternal light. The Devourer ship reached the crystal vessel and began to wrap around it like a living shadow. Jake could see the Zephyrian ship's hull start to dissolve where the enemy touched it. Emergency! Transport! Crystalline, who cuts deep, shouted. Save who you can. Lights flashed as the alien ship's transport system tried to pull crew members off the dying vessel, but the Devourer was eating the ship too fast. In less than a minute, the entire dreadnought was gone. 300 Zephyrian warriors experienced. Fighters who had lived for centuries were simply erased from existence. My God, whispered Lieutenant Kevin Torres from his position at the sensor station. It's like they never existed. More Devourer ships were approaching now. The human vessels opened fire with their railguns and missile systems. Jake watched as tungsten rounds and explosive warheads struck the enemy ships, but the shadow vessels absorbed the explosions and kinetic energy just like they had absorbed the crystal weapons. All weapons ineffective, reported Captain Sarah Walsh from the Cruiser Ranger. Repeat, all weapons ineffective. They are feeding on everything we throw at them. Jake felt a cold fear in his stomach. If their weapons did not work, how could they protect New Haven? How could they save anyone? The Devourers kept coming. A group of 5 shadow ships surrounded the human destroyer Phoenix. Captain Dan Roberts tried to escape, but the enemy was too fast. Jake watched helplessly as the Phoenix disappeared into the darkness, taking its crew of 150 with it. All ships, full retreat, Admiral Blake commanded. Fall back to defensive position Beta. We need to regroup. The combined fleet turned and ran. Jake had never felt so helpless in his life. Behind them, the Devourers continued their advance toward New Haven at their current speed. They would reach the colony in 6 hours. In the command center of the alien flagship. Human and Zephyrian officers worked together to understand what had happened. Lieutenant Amy Foster ran calculations on her portable computer while alien technicians shared their sensor readings. "Every weapon we fired at them made them stronger," Amy reported. "Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, explosives. They absorb it all and use it to grow." Crystalline Who Cuts Deep's armor had turned dark blue with black spots. Jake had learned this meant the alien was confused and worried. "In all our history, we have never encountered an enemy that could not be destroyed with sufficient force. How does one fight an enemy that becomes stronger when attacked?" Admiral Blake's voice came over the communication system. "All senior officers report to the Vigilant for emergency planning session. We have less than 6 hours to find a solution." Jake joined the meeting aboard the human flagship. The conference room was crowded with officers from both species. The humans looked grim and determined. The Zephyrians seemed lost and frightened. For the first time since the war began, Jake felt sorry for the aliens. "Options?" Admiral Blake asked bluntly. Captain Grant spoke first. "We could try to evacuate New Haven, but there are 2 million people there. We do not have enough ships to move them all in 6 hours. "Even if we could," added Captain Murphy, "where would we take them?" "The Devourers will just follow and consume them eventually." A young Zephyrian officer named Crystal That Sings with Light offered an idea. "Perhaps we could use our ships as shields, block their path while the humans escape." "That would only delay them," Crystalline Who Cuts Deep replied. "And we would lose all our remaining ships." Jake listened to the discussion with growing frustration. Every idea led to the same conclusion. They could not fight an enemy that grew stronger with every attack. But there had to be something. There was always something. What if we are thinking about this wrong? Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "What if the answer is not to fight them at all?" "Explain," Admiral Blake said. "Every weapon we have tried feeds them energy. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, explosives. They all release energy when they hit. But what if we could find something that does not release energy, something that just stops them?" Amy Foster looked up from her computer. "You mean like a physical barrier? Something solid they cannot absorb?" "Maybe, or maybe something that removes energy instead of adding it." The room was quiet as everyone thought about this. Then Captain Walsh spoke up. "The asteroid belt?" Lieutenant Monica Wells reported that the Devourers are avoiding the asteroid belt. They are taking a longer route around it. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. Why would they avoid rocks unless rocks are dangerous to them? Crystalline Who Cuts Deep's armor began to change color, shifting from dark blue to silver. "You think they cannot consume solid matter? Only energy?" "It makes sense," Amy said, her fingers flying over her computer. "Every weapon that hurt us released energy when it hit them. But asteroids are just rock and metal, no energy release." "Admiral." Blake leaned forward. "So we need weapons that do not release energy. Weapons that just hit them with solid matter. Pure kinetic force," Jake said. "No explosions, no energy beams, just mass times velocity." For the first time since the battle began, Jake saw hope. In the faces around him, it was a crazy idea, but it was better than running away or dying. "How long would it take to modify our weapons?" Admiral Blake asked. Captain Grant consulted with her engineering team over the radio. "Commander Paul Davis says we can strip the explosive charges from our missiles and torpedoes in about 2 hours. Turn them into solid projectiles. The rail guns are already kinetic weapons," Amy added. "We just need to make sure we are using solid rounds with no explosive tips." Crystalline Who Cuts Deep looked uncertain. "Our weapons are all energy-based. We cannot change them easily." "And then we will have to do this without you," Admiral Blake said. "Can your ships provide sensor support and coordination?" "Yes, our sensors are better than yours. We can guide your solid weapons to their targets." Jake felt a strange feeling in his chest. The Zephyrians, who had always been so proud of their superior technology, were asking humans for help. They needed human weapons and human ideas to save both species. "We have 4 hours until the Devourers reach New Haven." The human ships worked like busy hives for the next 3 hours. Jake had never seen anything like it. Engineers crawled through weapon systems, pulling out explosive charges and energy cores. They were turning every missile and torpedo into a simple chunk of metal that would hit hard and do nothing else. Commander Paul Davis led the work on the Defiant. He was a big man with thick hands and a mind that understood machines better than most people understood other people. Right now he was elbow-deep in a torpedo tube, removing the warhead from a Mark 7 missile. "Jake, hand me that wrench," Paul said, his voice muffled by the machinery around him. "We need to balance these things perfectly or they will spin off. Course when we fire them." Jake passed him the tool and watched as Paul worked. The torpedo that had once carried enough explosive power to destroy a small building was now just a tungsten core projectile. It would hit whatever it was aimed at with tremendous force, but it would not explode. "Will this really work?" Jake asked. Paul looked up at him with grease on his face and hope in his eyes. "It has to work. We do not have any other ideas." "Oh." Around the ship, similar work was happening. Sergeant Lisa Park was in the missile bay with her team, removing guidance systems that used energy and replacing them with simple mechanical controls. The missiles would be dumber, but they would not feed the enemy. "These things are going to fly like rocks," Lisa said as she sealed up another modified weapon. "But rocks can hurt if you throw them hard enough." Lieutenant Amy Foster was working with the railgun systems. These weapons already fired solid metal projectiles, but they had energy-based targeting systems that might feed the Devourers. Amy was replacing the electronic systems with mechanical ones that used no power at all. "It is like going back to the old days," Amy said as she calibrated an optical sight. "Before we had computers and energy weapons, soldiers used iron sights and muscle memory." Captain Grant moved through the ship, checking on the work and encouraging the crew. She stopped at every workstation, asking questions and offering help. Jake could see that she was worried, but she did not let it show. "How are we doing, Paul?" she asked when she reached the torpedo bay. "Almost finished, Captain. We will have 40 solid core torpedoes ready in 1 hour. The rail guns are already converted. We are as ready as we can be." Similar work was happening on all the human ships. The Vigilant, the Ranger, the Lightning, and the Phoenix II were all being converted from high-tech warships to simple kinetic weapons platforms. It was the biggest change in human military technology in centuries, but the most interesting thing was happening on the Zephyrian ships. The aliens could not easily change their energy weapons, but they were learning from the humans in other ways. Crystalline, who cuts deep, had asked for human engineers to come aboard his flagship and show his people how to think about kinetic warfare. Jake found himself in the alien ship's weapon control center, surrounded by tall blue beings who watched his every move with their diamond eyes. He was trying to explain how to calculate the path of a projectile without using energy-based computers. "You must think of the projectile as a thrown stone," Jake said, drawing diagrams on a crystal board. "It follows a curved path through space. You can predict where it will go by understanding mass, velocity, and gravity." A young alien named Harmony in Crystal Song asked, "But how do you aim without energy sensors?" "With your eyes," Jake replied. "You look at the target, estimate the distance, and calculate the angle. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years." The aliens found this concept fascinating. They had used energy weapons for so long that they had forgotten how to fight without them. But they were fast learners, and their natural mathematical abilities made them excellent at calculating trajectories. "Your species has an interesting relationship with primitive technology," Crystalline, who cuts deep, observed. "You do not abandon old methods when you discover new ones. You keep both." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Jake replied. "Energy weapons are powerful, but they are not always the right tool for the job." The alien's armor shifted to a warm gold color. "We are beginning to understand this. Perhaps wisdom lies not in having the most advanced technology, but in knowing when to use simple solutions." As the work continued, Jake noticed something changing in the way the humans and aliens worked together. The fear and suspicion were fading, replaced by mutual respect. The aliens admired human creativity and adaptability. The humans respected alien precision and mathematical skills. Lieutenant Monica Wells had been monitoring the Devourer advance from the communication center. Every few minutes, she provided updates that made everyone work faster. Enemy fleet is now 2 hours from New Haven, she announced. They are maintaining course and speed. No sign that they know we are preparing to fight them again? Jake hoped that was true. If the Devourers could learn and adapt as fast as humans and aliens could, this new plan might not work either. Commander Helen Shaw was coordinating the overall battle plan from the Vigilant. She had been a tactical officer for 15 years and had fought in dozens of battles. But she had never planned a fight like this one. All ships, this is command. Final weapons check in 30 minutes. We will have one chance to get this right. The plan was simple but dangerous. The combined fleet would approach the Devourers from multiple directions, using the alien ship's superior sensors to guide human kinetic weapons. The Zephyrian vessels would stay back and provide targeting information while the human ships moved. In close to deliver the solid projectiles, but there was a big risk. If the kinetic weapons did not work, the human ships would be too close to escape. They would be destroyed just like the alien ships in the first battle. Jake made his way back to the Defiant as the final preparations were completed. The ship felt different now. The weapon systems hummed with a lower, simpler sound. The advanced targeting computers had been replaced with mechanical sights that reminded Jake of ancient canon. Captain Grant called the senior officers to the bridge for a final briefing. The room was quiet as everyone understood what they were about to attempt. In 1 hour we will know if our plan works, the captain said. If it does, we save New Haven and both our species. If it does not, we will probably all die. But we cannot run away and let 2 million innocent people be consumed by those things. Amy Foster spoke up from the weapons station. Captain, all kinetic systems are ready. We have 40 solid core torpedoes and unlimited railgun ammunition. The targeting systems are mechanical only, no energy signatures for the enemy to detect or absorb. Good. Jake, what is the status of our alien allies? Jake had been in constant contact with the Zephyrian ships. They are ready to provide sensor support and targeting data. Their ships will stay at maximum range and guide our weapons to their targets. Crystalline, who cuts deep, says his people are honored to fight beside us. Captain Grant nodded. It is strange how war can turn enemies into friends. 6 months ago, I would have gladly destroyed every Zephyrian ship in space. Now I trust them with the lives of my crew. The final hour passed quickly. Jake stood at his station, watching the tactical display as the combined fleet moved toward the enemy. The Devourers were close to New Haven now, their dark ships spreading out to surround the colony world. All ships, this is Admiral Blake. We are beginning our attack run. Remember, kinetic weapons only, no energy discharge of any kind. Good luck to all of you. The human ships accelerated toward the enemy. Jake could see the Devourer vessels on the screen, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. In a few minutes, they would know if human ingenuity and alien precision could defeat an enemy that fed on energy itself. Captain Grant sat in her command chair. Calm and ready. All stations report ready for combat. Weapons ready, Captain. Amy reported. Sensors ready, added Kevin Torres. Engineering ready, came Paul Davis's voice from below. Jake took a deep breath and gripped his console. Tactical coordination with alien fleet ready, Captain. Then let us find out what humans can do, Captain Grant said. All ships, commence attack. The real battle was about to begin. The first kinetic torpedo left the Defiant's launch tube with a simple mechanical push. No energy, no explosion, just a chunk of tungsten flying through space at incredible speed. Jake watched it streak toward the nearest Devourer ship like a silver bullet in the darkness. When it hit, something amazing happened. The shadow vessel shuddered and began to break apart. Pieces of dark matter scattered into space like broken glass. The Devourer ship that had seemed so powerful and unstoppable was destroyed by a simple piece of metal moving very fast. Direct hit confirmed, Amy Foster shouted from the weapons station. Target destroyed. The kinetic weapons work. Cheers erupted across the bridge of the Defiant, but Captain Grant quickly called for quiet. Save the celebration for later. We have many more targets to eliminate. Across the battle zone, other human ships were having similar success. The destroyer Lightning, commanded by Captain Bill Murphy, fired a full spread of solid-core missiles at a group of 3 Devourer vessels. The tungsten projectiles punched through the shadow ships like bullets through paper. "This is Lightning to all ships," Captain Murphy's excited voice crackled over the radio. "Confirmed kills on 3 enemy vessels. These things cannot handle kinetic impacts." The railguns were even more effective. The cruiser Ranger unleashed a storm of tungsten rounds at a large Devourer ship. Each projectile was small, but they hit with tremendous force. The enemy vessel was torn apart in seconds, its dark substance dissolving into nothing. Jake coordinated the attack from his position on the bridge, relaying targeting information between the human ships and their Zephyrian allies. The alien vessels stayed at long range, using their superior sensors to guide human weapons to their targets. "Crystalline Who Cuts Deep reports 4 more enemy ships approaching from the port side," Jake announced. "Distance 50,000 kilometers and closing fast." "Amy, target those ships with the railguns," Captain Grant ordered. "Full automatic fire." The Defiant's main railgun began to speak, firing tungsten rounds as fast as the loading mechanism could cycle. Each shot created a brilliant flash as the projectile left the barrel at a significant fraction of light speed. The approaching Devourer ships tried to dodge, but the kinetic rounds were too fast and too numerous, but the enemy was learning too. The Devourers began to split up, making smaller targets that were harder to hit. They also started moving in. Unpredictable patterns weaving through space like living things instead of ships. "They are adapting their tactics," observed Lieutenant Kevin Torres from the sensor station. "The enemy is no longer approaching in formation. They are scattering to make targeting more difficult." Admiral Blake's voice came over the communication system from the Vigilant. "All ships, be advised that enemy forces are dispersing. Maintain formation and concentrate fire on individual targets. Do not let them separate us." The battle began to spread out across a huge area of space. Small groups of Devourer ships tried to get around the human fleet and reach New Haven. The human vessels had to split up to intercept them, making the coordination much more difficult. Jake found himself managing multiple conversations at once, keeping track of where each ship was and what targets they were engaging. The Zephyrian sensor data was crucial for this, but it was hard to process all the information quickly enough. Human vessel Phoenix 2 reports mechanical failure in main railgun, Jake announced. "They are limited to torpedo attacks only." Captain Sarah Walsh was commanding the Phoenix 2, the replacement for the ship that had been lost in the first battle. She was an experienced officer, but her ship was older and the conversion to kinetic weapons had not gone perfectly. "We can still fight," Captain Walsh reported, "but we will need close support from other vessels." The destroyer Lightning moved to cover the Phoenix 2, providing railgun fire while the smaller ship continued to launch kinetic torpedoes. It was exactly the kind of teamwork that human forces were known for, each ship supporting the others, but the Devourers had a new tactic too. Instead of attacking the human ships directly, they began to target the kinetic projectiles themselves. The shadow vessels could absorb energy, including the kinetic energy of moving objects if they hit them just right. Jake watched in alarm as a Devourer ship intercepted 3 railgun rounds in mid-flight, absorbing their momentum and growing slightly larger. "Captain, the enemy is learning to counter our kinetic weapons. They are catching our projectiles." "Then we need to fire faster than they can catch," Captain Grant replied. "All ships maximum rate of fire. Overwhelm their ability to intercept." The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railguns fired as fast as they could cycle, creating a storm of tungsten projectiles. Torpedo tubes launched solid-core missiles in rapid sequence. The space between the fleets filled with deadly metal moving at tremendous speed. Most of the projectiles got through. The Devourers could intercept some of the kinetic weapons, but not all of them. Enemy ships continued to break apart under the Impact of tungsten rounds and solid missiles. Commander Paul Davis had been monitoring the weapon systems from the engineering deck. Now he contacted the bridge with an important discovery. Captain, I have been watching how the enemy intercepts our projectiles. They can only catch the ones they can see coming. If we fire from multiple angles at the same time, they cannot stop all of them. This gave Jake an idea. Captain, what if we coordinate with the Zephyrian ships? They could move to different positions and provide targeting data for crossfire attacks. Captain Grant considered this quickly. Jake, contact Crystalline who cuts deep. Ask if his ships can reposition to give us multiple firing angles. Jake opened the communication channel to the alien flagship. Crystalline who cuts deep, this is Jake Morrison. We need your ships to move to new positions so we can attack the enemy from multiple directions at once. The alien war leader's response came back immediately. Understood, Human Jake. We will move to provide crossfire opportunities. Your tactical thinking continues to impress us. The Zephyrian ships began to move, their crystal hulls glowing as they changed position. They spread out around the battle zone, creating a network of sensor stations that could guide human weapons from any angle. The new tactic worked perfectly. When the human ships fired at a Devourer vessel from multiple directions at the same time, the enemy could not intercept all the projectiles. At least some of the kinetic weapons got through, and that was enough to destroy the target. Ensign Gary Palmer, working at the tactical station, kept track of the enemy losses. Captain, we have confirmed destruction of 37 Devourer vessels. Enemy force strength is down to approximately 60% of original numbers. But the human fleet was taking damage too. The Phoenix II had lost its torpedo tubes to a near miss from a Devourer ship. The Ranger was running low on railgun ammunition. The Lightning had engine problems that reduced its speed and maneuverability. Admiral Blake to all ships, came the voice from the Vigilant. We are winning this battle, but we need to end it quickly. Our ammunition supplies are not unlimited, and some ships are reporting mechanical problems. Jake looked at the tactical display, studying the positions of the remaining enemy ships. Most of them were now scattered across a wide area, making them harder to target but also less dangerous to New Haven. But there was still a group of large Devourer vessels moving directly toward the colony world. Captain, there are 12 enemy ships still on course for New Haven. If they reach the planet, they will be able to consume the population before we can stop them. Captain Grant studied the display carefully. How long until they reach the planet? 23 minutes at current speed, Kevin Torres reported. And how long to intercept them with our current course? Amy Foster ran the calculations quickly. 26 minutes, Captain. We will be 3 minutes too late. The math was simple and terrible. The fastest human ships could not reach the colony world before the Devourers got there. 2 million people were about to die unless someone found a way to change the equation. That was when Crystalline who cuts deep made an offer that surprised everyone. Human fleet, this is Crystalline who cuts deep. Our ships are faster than yours. We can reach the enemy before they attack your colony, but our weapons do not work against them. We would be sacrificing ourselves for no gain. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The alien war leader was offering to throw away his ships and crews to buy a few extra minutes for the humans. It would not save New Haven, but it showed that the Zephyrians had changed from the cold killers they had been before, but Captain Grant had a different idea. Crystalline who cuts deep. What if your ships carried our kinetic weapons? Could you transport human torpedoes to your vessels and fire them at the enemy? There was a pause as the alien considered this. It is possible. Our transport systems could move your solid projectiles to our ships, but we have no launching mechanisms for them. You do not need launching mechanisms, Jake said suddenly. You can just transport the torpedoes directly into space next to the enemy ships. Let momentum and gravity do the rest. It was a crazy idea, but it might work. The Zephyrian ships could reach the Devourers before they got to New Haven, if they could. Transport kinetic torpedoes right next to the enemy vessels. The Zephyrian ships moved through space like silver arrows, racing toward New Haven and the 12 Devourer vessels that threatened the colony world. Jake watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the alien ships closed the distance with impossible speed. Their crystal hulls glowed brighter as they pushed their engines to maximum power. "Crystalline who cuts deep to human fleet," the alien war leader's voice came over the radio. "We are in position above your colony world. Beginning transport of kinetic weapons now." On the tactical display, Jake could see the alien ships spreading out in a perfect formation around the approaching Devourers. Each Zephyrian vessel carried human torpedoes that would be transported directly into space next to the enemy ships. It was a plan that combined the best of both technologies. "First transport wave beginning," the alien commander reported, deploying torpedoes at point-blank range. What happened next was beautiful and terrible to watch. Tungsten core torpedoes appeared in space just meters away from the Devourer ships, moving at tremendous speed. The enemy vessels had no time to react or intercept the projectiles. The solid metal rounds punched through the shadow ships like bullets through water. 3 Devourer vessels broke apart immediately. Their dark substance scattered into space as the kinetic impacts tore them apart from the inside. The remaining 9 enemy ships tried to scatter, but the Zephyrian vessels were faster and more maneuverable. "Second transport wave," Crystalline who cuts deep announced, "target the large enemy vessel on the port side." More torpedoes appeared in space, this time targeting the biggest Devourer ship in the group. The massive shadow vessel absorbed the first few impacts without serious damage, but it could not withstand the barrage that followed. Dozens of tungsten rounds materialized inside its dark hull, tearing it apart from within. Captain Grant watched the battle from the bridge of the Defiant with growing amazement. "I have never seen anything like this. They are using our weapons better than we could ourselves." Jake coordinated the attack from his station, relaying targeting information between the human and alien ships. The Zephyrians were incredibly precise with their transport technology, placing each torpedo exactly where it would do the most damage. "Enemy ship count down to 6 vessels," reported Lieutenant Kevin Torres. "The aliens are destroying them faster than we destroyed them in direct combat." But the Devourers were learning again. The remaining ships began to move in tight spirals, creating gravitational distortions that made it harder for the Zephyrians to transport weapons accurately. 2 torpedoes missed their targets completely, flying harmlessly into empty space. "The enemy is adapting to our transport tactics," Crystalline who cuts deep reported. "We need a new approach." That was when Ensign Gary Palmer, working at the tactical station, made an important observation. "Captain, the Devourers are moving in patterns that create gravitational interference. But they have to maintain those patterns to keep the interference active. That makes them predictable." Jake understood immediately. "If they have to move in specific patterns to block the transports, we can predict where they will be in place." "The torpedoes accordingly." Captain Grant nodded. "Jake, relay that information to our alien allies. Tell them to aim where the enemy ships will be, not where they are now." The new tactic worked perfectly. The Zephyrians began transporting torpedoes to positions where the Devourer ships would be in a few seconds, accounting for their defensive movement patterns. The enemy vessels flew directly into the kinetic weapons, destroying themselves in their attempt to avoid them. 4 more Devourer ships broke apart under the kinetic barrage. Only 2 enemy vessels remained, and they were no longer moving toward New Haven. Instead, they were trying to escape back toward deep space. "Let them go," Admiral Blake's voice came over the radio. "Our priority is protecting the colony, not hunting down stragglers." Jake felt a huge weight lift from his shoulders as he realized that New Haven was safe. 2 million innocent people would live because humans and Zephyrians had learned to work together. But the battle was not over yet. There were still Devourer ships scattered throughout the system, and the main human fleet was still engaged with them. The Zephyrian ships turned away from New Haven and began to return to the main battle zone. But something had changed in the way they moved. Their formations were looser, more creative. They had learned from watching humans fight, and now they were applying those lessons. Crystalline, who cuts deep to human fleet, the alien commander sighed. We are returning to assist with the remaining enemy vessels. We have learned much about kinetic warfare from your species. Perhaps we can surprise the enemy again. What the aliens did next amazed everyone watching. Instead of using their transport technology to place torpedoes next to enemy ships, they began transporting asteroids from the nearby belt. Chunks of rock and metal appeared in space around the Devourer vessels, creating kinetic impacts that were even more devastating than the tungsten rounds. They are thinking like humans now, Captain Grant observed with admiration, using their environment as a weapon instead of relying only on manufactured projectiles. The remaining Devourer ships were caught completely off guard by this new tactic. They had learned to defend against transported torpedoes, but they were not prepared for entire asteroids appearing around them. The massive rocks struck with incredible force, shattering the shadow vessels like glass. Lieutenant Amy Foster monitored the battle from the weapons station with growing excitement. Captain, enemy ship count is down to 12 vessels. They are breaking off their attack and trying to retreat. But the combined human and alien fleet was not going to let them escape easily. The Zephyrian ships used their speed advantage to chase down the fleeing Devourers while the human vessels provided long-range kinetic fire support. Jake coordinated the pursuit, making sure that no enemy ship escaped without being targeted. The aliens had become incredibly skilled at using their transport technology for warfare, while the humans provided the tactical thinking that made the attacks effective. Final enemy vessel destroyed, Crystalline, who cuts deep, reported. The threat to the system has been eliminated. Cheers erupted across every ship in the fleet. The impossible had been accomplished. An enemy that seemed unstoppable had been defeated by cooperation between two species that had been trying to kill each other just days before. But as the excitement died down, Jake realized that something important had changed. The Zephyrians were no longer the cold, merciless warriors he had feared. They had learned compassion and creativity from working with humans, and the humans had learned precision and coordination from working with the aliens. Captain Grant called for a fleet-wide communication session. Ships from both species linked their communication systems together so that everyone could hear her words. Today we have accomplished something that neither of our species could have done alone, the captain began. Humans provided the adaptability and creative thinking that found a solution to an impossible problem. Zephyrians provided the precision and advanced technology that made the solution effective. Jake listened as crew members from both species shared their experiences of the battle. The stories were similar. Humans had been impressed by alien mathematical skills and technological precision. Aliens had been amazed by human creativity and willingness to take risks. Crystalline, who cuts deep, spoke for the Zephyrian fleet. We came to this battle believing that advanced technology was the answer to every problem. We learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the ability to think in new ways. Your species has taught us that wisdom is more valuable than power, Admiral Blake responded from the Vigilant. And your species has taught us that precision and coordination can make our creativity more effective. Together we are stronger than either of us could be alone. Jake thought about his sister Carol and his nephew Danny, safe on New Haven because two enemies had learned to become allies. He thought about the Zephyrian warriors who had been willing to sacrifice themselves to save human lives. He thought about how much both species had learned from each other in just a few days. The war between our species is over, Admiral Blake announced, but our alliance is just beginning. The universe is a dangerous place, and we will face other threats. In the future, when we do, we will face them together. As the combined fleet began the journey back to human space, Jake looked out at the Zephyrian ships flying beside them. Their crystal hulls no longer looked threatening. They looked like the ships of friends and allies. The Devourers had been defeated not by superior weapons or advanced technology, but by the simple act of two different species learning to work together. Humans had shown the universe that their greatest strength was not their technology or their courage, but their ability to turn enemies into friends and find solutions where Others saw only problems. Jake smiled as he watched the stars pass by. The galaxy was a big place, full of wonders and dangers that no one species could handle alone. But with allies like the Zephyrians, humanity was ready for whatever came next. In the end, the humans had not conquered their enemies. They had done something much more powerful. They had shown them a better way to live,